Empirical research is normally considered to be research that is based upon observation or statistical analysis of data. And the MBR Empirical Findings article is designed to be a translation of that type of research into a form that practicing managers can understand and hopefully use. So, when we look at these articles, we expect the articles to identify a research question or business problem that is of significant importance to managers. It can present the results of, say, an experiment, a survey, a data analysis that provides insights into that question. It should explain why the results simply don't confirm what managers already know, because that's not going to add a lot of value. When possible, if there is theory that relates to that type of article, we ought to consider that theory. And finally, it might identify the implications of those findings in terms of broader research theory. Another important aspect of the template is what reviewers would be looking for. In the case of an empirical findings article, what the reviewers are going to be looking for is that we're asking an important question, that the business problem that this relates to is significant. The degree to which the findings are unexpected, that might be that they're novel or the results are counterintuitive or confusing to managers. Now, the articles are not supposed to be confusing. We want you to write them very clearly. However, we want some findings that don't simply tell managers what they already know. The degree to which we can tie that into the existing research literature of theory or analysis to provide a convincing explanation. This is kind of what ties it into research. And finally, and this is true of all MBR articles, the findings have to be presented in a manner likely to engage your readers. And the template first page gives a set of instructions, and the instructions simply tell you, once you've written your template, delete the instructions page, use these stylings, and most importantly, there's going to be a reviewer appendix at the end of the template, and that viewer appendix is going to be where you convince the individuals reviewing your article that your empirical study was done in a rigorous way, because putting that stuff in the body of the article will often make the article seem way too pedantic, way too academic for the practicing manager. Virtually all MBR submissions come with a cover page, and the cover page tells the title of the article. It has a tagline, and the tagline is a very short statement about what the article is about, what value the reader can expect to get from it, and it is used when the article is presented on the website, so it's very important to have a tagline. This does not go in the article itself. A series of keywords which will help us find the article when researchers go searching for that particular topic. And finally, an executive summary, which will appear at the beginning of the article, which captures the flavor of the article. It kind of summarizes what it's about, and it's the thing that your typical executive reader would read before deciding whether or not it was worth spending the time to actually read the article itself. The body of an empirical findings article begins with a title and then an introduction which focuses on the business problem. It then gives a very brief review of the research, and you want to keep this under a page if you possibly can. If you have a much more extensive review, you might write a separate research summary for practice, which is another type of submission, which will allow you to do a systematic review of the literature. We then have a very brief protocol which identifies the techniques that were used in gathering or analyzing the data. This should be written in a manner that's going to be accessible to practitioner. You are going to have much more details on that when you get to the reviewer appendix, which will not be included. So this is just enough to make the reader convinced that you are actually systematic. Then you can report your findings, And once again, you're encouraged to use things like tables and other visual aids to help communicate the findings. Then maybe some discussion that identifies why these findings might be considered of interest to a typical manager. And it's possible you might also propose an alternative theory if existing theories don't seem to do a very good job explaining the findings. But we also have a novel idea submission category that you could use if you're going to propose something a little more elaborate. The conclusions should be the key takeaways from the empirical findings article. You want to keep them under a page, and you want to assume that some readers are going to jump directly to the conclusion, so you want them self-contained from the rest of the text. And then finally, APA format should be used for any references. The reviewer appendix for the EFA article is designed to convince a reviewer that systematic and rigorous research methods were applied to the research being reported in the article. We keep it out of the body of the article, and this is an area where you can use a more scholarly tone if you choose to. But the key thing is you want to convince your reviewers that the research was conducted in a systematic way. You begin by explaining where you got the question. Was it from personal experience? Was it something you read about in the literature? We want to know where that question came from. Then you can explore the research design, and the template will tell you a little bit about the types of things that you might want to include in describing how your design took place. You can then talk about how the research was performed or how it was conducted. Once again, the idea here is to convince the readers that you were systematic in your investigation. Then you can talk about the process through which you came to your conclusions and anything that needs further elaboration in the discussion. Also, make sure that anything that you've copied into your article has appropriate permissions. This is a particular concern when we deal with things like photographs. And as the author of the article, you're going to be attesting to the fact that you have permissions for everything we're publishing. So that's the basic idea of the empirical findings article, and this is an article which is probably closest in structure to your typical research article in a journal, but it is framed in a way so that it's intended to be communicated to practice as opposed to being communicated to other researchers.